very much.
You get no blessings.
Excellent. You're like, oh,
No one blessed
first
you.
year is constantly down.
I bless myself.
Second question. Therapeutic ranges should be treated as reference ranges, not absolutes. True or false?
True.
Excellent. Next question. Which population has the highest percentage of total body water?
Peds.
Excellent. Knocking my socks off, guys. Which is the most consistent change observed in geriatric patients?
Okay.
Multi-compartment PK models with a biphasic profile are best used to describe drugs that blank following an IV boluses. I got A and I got B. Oh, like, is there a 5? Sorry. Yep, significant distribution case and underdose or elimination
But
phase.
she said B. It's like old.
For a drug that follows a
I didn't see there was a single
model.
PO
The
dose, so it's like,
typically
oh,
represents the distribution of a drug.
Tissues.
Tissues. Excellent. For a drug that follows a 2-compartment open PK model, which is our the best loading dose method. I got 1s and 3s. Any questions?
Can I leave?
I don't know. I think it did. I don't remember. So the question is, why do we use an intermittent infusion over, say, an IV bolus dose or a small several loading doses as opposed to a single IV bolus dose? So if we do the calculation, remember back to amiodarone, we had, 1,600 milligrams max daily loading. If we were to do that plus start an infusion, we're past tox levels, potentially, likely. So a lot of it has to do with tox and the distribution of the drug, and it's better to kind of give a little, let it distribute, give a little more, let it distribute, give a little bit more. Some people wanted to argue yesterday that why couldn't we use a oral solution? And I go, okay, but what is your assumption? The assumption has to be that your absorption is constant for your patient, and it's not going to be, it'll be mathematically, physiologically comparable to doing an infusion, so your bioavailabilities will match or be calculated to match that of your IV. But in practice, these are the best ways to do it because of the physical chemical properties of the drug.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Okay, so what we're used to is your normal IV bolus dose, dying drug in the patient, and now, well, that's what we know that an IV bolus dose looks like. But now what are we doing? Full compartment, so what is highlighted in orange? Central. And then sorry, I had to entertain myself while I'm making PowerPoints late at night, so I tried to do animations. But more conceptually, before administration, the drug is only in the syringe. And then you'll see those target organs highlighted in the middle there immediately after administration. And that just goes to highlight the highly perfused organs. And then after distribution has equilibrated, the whole patient should have the drug. What does that multi-compartment look like? Well, in blue, we're going to have our distribution phase. And the distribution phase isn't necessarily only distribution, right? What other processes can we have going on in that light blue area? Not absorption.
Elimination.
Elimination. What about the one that starts with an M?
Metabolism.
Metabolism, right? But if you are super close to time 0, potentially you could have only distribution occurring. And then, of course, our favorite elimination phase. Where's the terminal part of the elimination phase? At the
At the
end.
end.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm not concerned with you being able to calculate a K1-2 or a K2-1, but conceptually understand that there's movement between the central and the tissue. I don't think you'll ever have an opportunity, because I still haven't had the opportunity to calculate the microconstant, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so inside your folders, let's get started on the first application. Let's take 7 minutes.
Oh.
Looking forward. How are you doing that? 9:25.
There's one there.
I'm very hungry right now.
Can I get this food again?
And I just emailed Dr. Glavy with regards to your strengths and opportunities for your IL exam on Monday. I will work on getting that released to you right now, and then take a look at them before you start to make appointments with whoever stuff you need to think about. Cool?
What assumptions are necessary for this model?
First order between compartments.
First order.
Between compartments. That's all I know.
First order between compartments.
That's all I know.
First order. Explain the impact of these assumptions.
You know what's your name?
Oh. Wouldn't it be in 2? It says after equilibrium, is the concentration in each tissue
As
the
a
same?
hint, there should be about 4 assumptions that I
Shouldn't
came
it be?
up with.
Like it's in equilibrium with the plasma. Concentration.
After equilibrium. Exactly. Chris, what is even in that? I mean, you seem so enthralled with it.
That's so good. It's
Is it
a
chicken?
hummus and
Oh,
just a bunch of plants.
no chicken? See, that's why I never eat any of that stuff, because I don't like meat.
I usually like meat and I hate vegetables, but this is delicious.
There's no meat in there.
It's weird, right? I hate plants, but this is good. It's really good, man. I'm becoming a liberal.
I mean, it's fun. I've been here for 34 years.
I'm becoming an Austin liberal.
In that case, let me just say.
He will. 2020. Excuse me.
No, I just saw that a lot everywhere. People saying that.
Dude, I wonder how he feels about that 69 million. I would be like,
Well, I mean, he probably doesn't feel too bad about it because it's a kickstart to the campaign of the seat that John Cornyn's going to vacate. So
he seemed pretty excited when he was like on the news. He's like, fuck yeah.
Who was that?
Guido.
is he not?
He's on the news. He was like, dropped the F-bomb, and MSNBC was like, oh shit.
They're like, wait.
Oh yeah, we can't control what candidates say. I was like, oh shit.
The independent candidate.
Dude, I would vote for independent if anyone else would, but no one does.
Smart, man.
They always seem fair, like they're balanced.
Right.
It's like, but they'll never win.
No, not in bipartisan politics.
Isn't the concentration never the same?
No,
They
no.
say those parallel.
Yeah.
So they're never. Okay, so we gotta write that in words.
In words. We gotta write that in words.
I don't know how they just work.
You may draw pictures. They'll understand your pictures. You draw good pictures.
It's irrelevant to this.
Well,
I'm gonna answer every question in pictograms.
pentagram.
No, pictograms.
Oh, there's a pentagram.
Like B and then a leaf.
I
Like
live
bee
in,
leaf.
Athens, and satanic worshiping capital of the world. And
Really?
there's points that were supposedly used for devil rituals a long time ago. You can Google it; it's there. But they make the shape of a pentagram, and we've never had a tornado in the city limits, so they call it pentagram protection.
That's creepy. Maybe our town has that because tornadoes never hit us. It always goes around us.
Always hits Canton. That's where it is.
Yeah,
Every
or a
time
van.
Canton.
It never goes Grand Slam.
Yeah. Never goes crazy.
Yeah, we are worshiping the evil forces.
Grand normal sailing.
No. It's actually pretty hypertonic. Dude, just like the dirt there is kind of salty.
Hypertonicity decreases when you lose. Is today 7th, 8th?
Man, Coin's gonna put me to sleep today.
Huh?
Coin is gonna put me to sleep
No, bro.
with all her lab stuff that we'll never do.
The biggest problem with that is that's going to be 75% of the midterm.
Yeah.
I can't spell today.
At least you can write neat. Oh, was there a separate reading? Is there a separate reading besides chapter 5?
Yeah,
But before
22.
Oh,
That's where they talked about all the special pops and stuff.
oopsie. That's why I was like, what are you talking about? Where did that come
I
from?
didn't see it until Rika said, hey, make sure you read chapter 22. And I went, what? Chapter who?
Used to go around, right?
Oh, well, I woke up this morning and tried and
How did it look?
whatever.
Dude. Yeah,
Like this part where it says that the drug will concentrate in the tissue according to the affinity
Right.
of the drug, I was gonna
So
put
if it's
that.
lipophilic, it'll go to fat tissues. Yeah.
Maybe can you let that
Only the original monster. Come on, you gotta get the white one.
Oh, no, I like sugar.
No, it's so delicious though.
Really? It doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, it is. It is a lot more pretty, yeah. It's like rough too.
The football one tastes like the blue can of house. It's like Red Bull.
Oh, really? That sounds good.
Without that nasty after,
Sounds good.
finish it.
I'm trying to get that diabetes early on, guys. Get the couple of 100 grams of sugar this morning.
The first one?
no. You have to explain. She said there's 4. Just for one, but I didn't explain it either.
There are 4 of them?
She said there's at
Four
least
assumptions.
4. I think it's
Okay.
this part. Highlighted somewhere while I was partially asleep.
But you were partially asleep?
I am forever in that state.
Is it okay? Assumptions and sleep. No, wait.
I'm not ready.
Is it the
I just need one assumption. Just one. All the way over here. So you're gonna have to talk to me from all the way over there to all the way over here. Then Steve's gonna stand stand up with you while you answer. How's that?
Oh, it assumes that at T0 no drug is in the tissue department on page.
Just write it on there.
Okay.
I don't have the page numbers. I'm sorry, they cut off half.
These things.
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Our assumption is that the drug tissue concentration is uniform within the compartment.
Excellent. Everybody got that? Can I give you a
The
hand?
drug tissue
Drug tissue concentration is uniform between compartments.
It's because he's at equilibrium.
That's another assumption.
Did y'all put all transfer rate processes?
Another
in
assumption we
passage?
had was blood flow
Our
remains
first order
constant.
processes.
Good answer.
Holy crap. Rapid firing over there. I snorted that dude shit this morning.
I know it smells terrible. I'm trying to get rid of it.
No one said it, so
He knows I'm thinking.
Could go get some popcorn.
Everybody got that? So when we say follows first order process, what are we assuming that really means? Anyone?
Sorry, but
POD thing?
Linearity?
I
And why do we
here,
assume
but I was late.
linearity?
I'm sorry.
Because it's a first order drug.
Into out of
Okay. Who do you want to?
That's a weird way to define something.
I'm not an option today. Pick a victim. Ready?
All transfer rate processes for the passage of drug into or out of the compartment are first order.
Okay. What else you got? Let me see. Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have something different?
There's something about times. Oh yeah.
You got something?
Drug.
What?
No drug is eliminated at time zero.
Most model elimination occurs from the central compartment.
Everybody got that? Very good. All right, so if I can summarize question 1, my assumptions is that I assume linearity because I'm playing the first order drug. I assume homogeneity, which is basically what Paul mentioned with needing to assume equal distribution within that compartment. Elimination occurs from the central compartment. And that the last thing I have is immediate distribution occurs in the plasma compartment. Okay, for question 2, you want to shout out your answer, yes or no?
no.
And why is that?
immediate distribution occurs in the plasma.
So if I could provide more concreteness to your answers. Like you said, tissue types are different, which means that your enzymatic activities are different, and your cell types are different. Therefore, your physical chemical properties and how they interact play a significant role. You're like, oh, Dr. G and Dr. Select are all over you. Yeah. Any questions on Act 1? So let's bring that forward into Act 2. That looks like this.
Oh no. Don't like that.
have to look at your notes to do this one.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I just don't remember where I read it. But I think this one is from this one.
That's all.
What the heck? You started with that's all you got?
That's all I got. I think that's. I don't know about that.
Alpha phase, beta phase,
Oh, yeah, it is.
distribution equilibrium. Well, you know what that is? The little dot part is the residual line, isn't it? Right?
This is A, this is B.
No, that's the residual line.
Why do you put
That's the residual line.
Okay, we have to choose from this one.
Yeah. Wait, what the heck is this? You gotta put A and B, bro.
Well, it says like
No,
I thought,
that's not
these are what we call
so it means the same thing. Yeah.
You remember? Intercept?
That's not an option though.
Okay, I was thinking, yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's the part. Okay, this is the elimination distribution equilibrium. So
That's distribution.
I think this one should be E, yeah. Yeah.
Wait,
that's the beginning.
here. I don't know.
Residual.
That doesn't answer me. That's the distribution of alpha phase.
This is distribution phase and elimination phase.
Well, that's the elimination phase based on the residual.
That'd be A, wouldn't it?
Yeah, these two. I think these
They're nice.
Oh, no.
So
Alpha, beta, and that's distribution phase.
I don't.
So
You know
where
what is
where
A
you
and
put?
what's D? I don't know what that
I told you
is.
where
Capital
it
A?
is. I think this.
A and B are used for the residual.
Yeah, that's why I said this one should be A, this one should be B. And with alpha and beta. You get what I mean? So I
Was it 42 or whatever?
There's your alpha and there's your beta.
Where the hell did that come from?
That's the alpha, that's the beta.
I mean,
Yeah.
sorry,
So you
that's
got
what
that. No, that's C then. This is.
No, it is. Remember, because
What's the difference between A, B, and alpha phase?
I don't know. I don't know what A and B are.
when we were
A and B is like
and that is
I don't know.
Wait, where does that point to?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay, C.
That one is
And this is D.
we use a pencil. Yeah.
B.
If it doesn't work out, you get off.
Okay, and then alpha, so that's the alpha and the beta. That's alpha. You got that. You gotta just figure out the distribution. Well, the
Elimination
residual
phase?
isn't that also the phase?
Oh, there's actually. Yeah. I was gonna point to this right here. There's nothing labeled there.
Distribution.
This one.
I was thinking
Oh, is that the equilibrium right here?
Yeah.
Maybe?
That's what I think. What the heck is this then? That's not a residual.
It has to be.
It's not a residual line.
What has to be what?
This is the residual line.
No, it's not here. I'm sure that's residual.
Swallow
See what
that
I
it's not.
Oh, okay.
see my point? The constant A and B are intercepts on the y-axis for each exponential phase.
That's what I put A
That's why.
and B.
Okay, we're going to be putting this option. Oh, what did you originally have there? I was thinking we're going to be putting layers.
All we have now is E and F. One of these.
None of them make sense for the residual line.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to see
What about, what did you put here?
phase,
Let's put distribution equilibrium
elimination,
here.
or
And then that's the residual line?
Put the residual line down.
Yeah. Okay. The pictures in this chapter are terrible.
Yeah, I might as well never.
I mean, because
Ask them what they
all the
put.
ones that when I look at all the ones are PO. That's the reason I asked. All the
Right.
ones are PO, and those PO
I
goes
guess I
picture.
should figure it out.
That has to be the residual line.
Yeah, for E.
What? A through F, what did we label this?
C.
C. Everybody got C? What about this orange dot here?
D.
D as in dog?
Yes.
Okay. What about this blue line here? What did we
We
call
still
that?
use it.
This extra F.
A, the alpha face.
Interesting.
Eh?
What about this funny looking dot in the middle of everything?
Beta.
That's the distribution equilibrium.
E. Yeah.
Anybody want to hazard a guess as to the significance of that point? So the net transfer between the central and the peripheral compartments are equal. That's not saying the rate, there's no rate, or that the rates are equal, the net transfer. And then what is this dotted blue line here?
This is residual.
Letter F, the residual line. And what did we say this for was?
The beta phase.
The beta phase. So here's my answers for that. And where did we put our two triangles? Hopefully you put your two triangles somewhere along the solid orange.
Of course.
Preferably closer to the end here. Want to hazard a guess why? Terminal what? Terminal elimination. Exactly. What does that give us? Okay.
Planes? Elimination?
Cool.
Oh, that's the KE. The slope between these 2 points right
Any
here.
questions? I have a question. What is it? So you're asking if I could try to rethink this. This is the significance of this one and this one? Okay. So with multiple compartments, you're going to have a new equation introduced to you today. And A plus B equals C. Just like how we calculated CT equals C0.
I guess it's the slope between these 2 points.
Okay, so we're
Which would
saying
make sense, 'cause
that
it's determined
in a multiple
elimination.
compartment, this is, did two compartment for this one.
Once it's
You're gonna have
already in
distribution
equilibrium,
phase,
which
and
is here.
this residual line
Yeah.
is gonna be the purest calculation of your distribution phase. And so that point is your, effectively, you can consider this akin to your C0 for your distribution phase. And then you've got your elimination phase here, and we extrapolate that. And so this is your purest elimination. Does that make sense so far? So you will likely need to bring this forward as we work on our next application. If I could provide some insights. You are more than welcome to graph.
I'm gonna be so much on the inside.
Pause that. Let's do this one. 2 minutes to do this one.
Oh, my. Poking myself.
Don't overthink this. You guys assume that you only need 2 minutes to do this?
What was the class from 3 hours to 3 hours? And you spent 2
I do
days to
have
3
the
hours.
calculators here.
Put 3, just put 3 in here.
What?
Sorry, that's a negative.
Point.
Really?
Women.
Not
It's Quamen, okay? Quamen. Gotta put that H in there.
I don't know what this means. We can do this in 2 months.
Maybe next time. This one.
Everyone knows that ln of e to a power is simply the power distributed down multiplied by.
I know. You won't let me. Oh, she got it up there. I was in that thing. So I used to put that back.
It's 9.
Do you just push on the first and then put the number? Oh, okay.
$5.6 million per kilogram.
I'm overthinking this.
Where is he at?
Did you put in just 3 hours in there?
Yes. Yeah.
You put it in.
I like that you say it with such gusto and authority.
I did that, but I got a new. Did I do something wrong?
Okay, time's up. Your options are A, B, C, D, E. What's your answer? A. What did you do? Plug in what?
The 3 hours.
Plug in 3 hours into my T. So it has to relate it to your new favorite equation for multiple compartments.
I got 11 okay.
What is my A?
First time I actually put in something.
What is A?
I didn't get it.
What is the value for A?
So, just in case you're wondering that odd number is okay.
12. Don't overthink it. What is my value for B?
18.
Cool. What is my rate? Distribution rate?
Oh, 5.8. Negative 5.8. Or is it just 5.8? Oh, it's just 5.8.
Therefore, my elimination rate
It's
as signified by
0.16.
beta.
0.16.
Yay! Feeling pretty good?
No.
Alright, so here's your multiple compartment equation. This is going to be representative of distribution, and this is going to be representative of elimination. Capital A is signified by
12, yes.
that's the normal E. Alpha is going to be signified by 5.8. Let's apply that to elimination. B then becomes 18. And beta, which is my elimination rate, 6. Easy peasy? Okay, let's jump forward to this one. To help facilitate movement through this, you will need use this equation here.
Are you able to do this down the calculator?
You may choose to
Plug it directly.
use the simple method
You do this.
if you do not
How do I use this calculator?
Be kind of higher than that one.
where
Are you able to do it on this calculator?
I will use this one.
You'd have to do it separately, probably.
Tell me what I've done.
In like 2 halves.
Because
It's the same document.
yeah, it's the same thing.
She did it.
answer called first
Okay.
2 points.
Little.
Okay. How many points equal line?
2.
Okay.
Infinite.
Choose to use half point 0.
Literally infinite amount of points to make a line.
One of these points.
Shit, that was abrasive.
Please kill me. I was hoping you'd break my neck.
Last 2 points. Don't overthink this.
Wow, that was impressive the way it stuck
Single
there.
isobolus dose over and over again. My last pick is going to be, here are some additional equations to calculate the remainder that we have never been exposed to before.
It's a cute hand.
Apparent volume of distribution from the central compartment. We must consider our dose plus the composite of C, just like we did before. We have a new way to calculate area under the curve. And we have a way to calculate clearance. Why do you suppose we use beta for this, as opposed to alpha? Because we're talking about elimination. Yeah? And then we're going to use that and bring it forward to calculate distribution of the terminal rate. Any questions? Let's knock this out. 10 minutes.
So I was going to get the terminal half-life. Oh no, I'm not. Dude, is she supposed to graph all these points? Find where the.
Yeah, we don't have to graph it. It's just gave us the equation. And I was trying to listen. You guys wouldn't stop. So I don't know now.
You're going to understand her anyways. Come on.
Wasn't happening. Bryce is always talking.
Your mama's always talking.
Yeah, she is.
She probably is. Mine is.
Yeah, mine's actually
Damn,
almost.
damn it.
You're right,
I'm not
Bryce.
supposed to agree with me.
I think this day and age, people are into
We didn't know how far was that early last week. So Andy.
Is there even a graph paper in there? Not saying that we're not going to graph it. You want to graph something? Let's graph something.
You said you want to graph something. All power to
I
you.
don't want to graph it.
All power to you. She said, you want to graph something? Oh my God.
I spent 10 hours of my life.
10 hours ago.
10 hours of my life.
I read this. Oh. Let's read this.
Was it a fun time? Was it a fun time?
Wasn't Ivy when they had to me?
10 hours?
Yeah.
That's
Every
kind
time
of fun,
every time I had to use the restroom or walk out,
You have to do everything.
Rico.
And can you imagine how many times you had to do that? You use the restroom a lot.
Maybe, you know what? I didn't have access to too much water during that time.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking.
So maybe throughout the 10 hours,
During the
maybe
cat,
2 or 3
they
times.
said we can't go to the restroom. This one goes.
I walked out for other stuff too.
Goes there. And I just go to the restroom. I was like, oh my God. Okay. So, I don't know if there's an Ellen.
Oh, there's a
Yeah.
half-life equation in the. It's like T1 half something over alpha. Did you see that in that reading?
Yeah. I mean,
Concentration, concentrations in each one.
I know she said last 2 points.
I saw the
I
T1
can't
half
see.
was something over
She doesn't
alpha.
have it where I can see the question above the chart.
There it is.
200 milligram bolus.
Is T1 half
And it falls to component.
of the elimination phase is 0.633.
There's a phone number.
I'm not looking in that
It's over
chapter
B.
again.
It's just 0.693 over
Beta.
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 For
how far?
It's what?
So it's the Ellen of 2
Is that
and beta.
Ellen of 2 and beta.
Yeah.
We're close.
We tried.
Oh, yeah, just don't worry about that thing.
But we need to know what beta is.
As long as you catch 18 in there, you'll be okay. Because we know it's gonna veer off. So.
Are we using the same values?
So do we subtract this guy minus all of these, or what? You know what I'm saying? Or do we plug it in and get a concentration on each one and then subtract
Do you
all
know
those
how
to
big that
200?
is?
200 minus 28 is a lot.
You don't know it?
Yeah, get that.
So obviously the x values are the same for residual
So how
lines.
do you get the beta? How do you get beta?
Oh, those 200.
Here, you guys both see it. I do it like this.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Oh, no, you should
200 is the total, so that's supposed to rematch. Is that how you
I don't struggle with graphing the concentration part. So
It's the worst reading I've ever read.
Yeah, I'm
I
not looking.
can't even make anything from it.
I mean, you can.
I
see
literally
it.
guessed through my
Yeah,
errands.
I read it. I mean, I did read it, but
I should look at the things in the reading and like
First is
figure out
DV.
commercial question that it's talking about. So, like we have the dominant
I don't really see how you get so graphic.
To get terminal half-life is because the ones that you put up there are not all the
Fuck, I'm
equations
stupid. You take the
so
slope of
they're
the
the
last 2
equations you use
points.
for those particular numbers. Like their numbers. So you use that equation for number 5.
Could you just take the slope between the last 2 points and
Huh?
get terminal half-life? You know what I mean? Because all these graphs
Gonna
gonna go
give us
Yeah.
So
It's
like
gonna give us care.
82 points over
Better.
here, or for you it'd be like 82 points over here would be
You have to find
The
K
terminal?
of that. You have to
The
find
K
of
now
that.
will now be better.
would be just the slope between those. So
Just
Yeah.
do the slope of the last 2 points.
yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Right? And then
Time
plug
is
that in
X.
You'll be able to get
to
the
the half-life
number.
equation. Because terminal half-life, because look, we're assuming that the last 2 points are the last 2 points of line because it
Right.
goes like this, right? So
Right.
if you take those 2 points at the very end and get the slope of those, terminal means at the very end, right? So you get the slope, that would probably be K right there, the terminal slope, and then plug that terminal slope into the half-life equation. I don't know if that's actually true or not.
But don't forget you're gonna use
It's first order. So use the
LN
first order one.
on the
It's first order, right?
yes first order. So you're gonna use
So first order.
LN.
So you use the LN path. Good enough. Okay. What is on number
0.12?
V sub D?
So I got
Beta?
it.
I think it's VD sub D. I think it's the volume of distribution of.
If it's 0.12,
Do you not need to do the natural log thing before?
I'm not sure. Because it was a linear. At the end, it's linear. You know.
Is it just regular slope or the natural log
I
slope?
think it's regular because at the end it's linear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at the end of the thing. Yeah, in this reading it talks about how it switches at
So
the
linear.
end. Yeah, it's
Terminal
linear.
elimination
The
is-
terminal elimination is linear.
Okay.
So I just assumed it's regular changing Y over changing X. I got the 0.12 for KE, but I don't know if that's right. I guess we're about to find out in like 5 minutes.
At what point does it become linear? Just the last 2 points? Does it say that where there's a cutoff where it becomes linear?
17 identified beta and alpha for us. Would you like to share your thought process behind that?
Turkey and
Beta is the
Turkey and
terminal half-life,
The rate.
the rate, obviously K, and then the distribution is alpha.
So, if I could paraphrase, what you calculated in number 1 and number 2 are going to move forward to numbers 3, 4, and so on. Make sure you're not using that actual half-life in hours, but the rate. Okay?
That would make any sense.
Do you use that 5.3 as your elimination half-life? Your terminal half-life?
It's like a
what does she mean by
0.12.
that?
Well, that was your K. I got 0.12, but you didn't plug it in to. It'd be 5.8.
What does she mean by don't calculate the actual half-life, but the rate? What is that?
5.8. After LNF2 over 0.1.
Bryce, do you know what she's talking about?
Wait. Well, I rounded 0.125 to 1.2.
Okay, so if I could provide a little bit of guidance on how to do the residual.
Here it is.
So we took my elimination, as we see in orange, I just connected the 3 dots, extrapolated back to time 0. This point here is my data. So once you have
Where's that graph?
that shown out, your orange line shown out,
Not that one. The
you
one from
look
last.
for
The one that looked like that.
your time points at time 0 after you extend your concentration line out. So I say maybe it's about 30. C will be about 30, I think. And then from 30, I subtract. Oh, darn it.
30 minus 9.
What's beta?
These and 9 is beta.
9.
Tell what you said, I don't know.
Where's the graph that we just labeled? When I start?
That one.
Do we all have the graph?
The graph is in here. Paper?
The
No,
one
no,
we did
from last application.
Oh, we did put it.
There it is.
Alright, so once we have our orange line, we're going to say 30 minus 9 is going to be 21. Make my first point there at time 0. Then I'm going to take 28.6, okay, which is right here, and 0.38. Where does 0.38 intersect the orange line? I don't know, 8.5. So 28.6 minus 8.5 equals 19 point something. So I'll make my next point there. I got 2 points. I can make a line. If you really want to be challenged, let's do 21.6 at 9.91. 0.91, I get 8. So what's 21.6 minus 8?
What is she doing? She's subtracting.
Now I've got 3 points. I can build out my residual line. In that residual line, I now have A, I've got alpha. From all of this, I've got B and beta. Okay. So, what I've done for your counterparts here is allow them to turn this in on Sunday at 5 p.m. Will that work for you?
Sure.
Turn this application in. Ideally, to get alpha or A.
Okay, listen, so
How did I do the orange line? Orange line is connecting the dots from
This is
the
the
last
dumbest
3
question I
points.
asked. How to get the pink line?
And then you
Probably
back
last year too.
to 0.
That gets me off the questions.
Is time in log? I don't know, you tell me. Does time ever come log? No. Is concentration going to be in log?
yes.
Why?
Semi-log paper.
First order drill? That might work for you Sunday.
Sure.
You can turn it in sooner if you would like. It's either now
Yeah, I want to know
or
if she's getting the pink line. Like the
From this
residuals.
line.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. She's using like some track.
Okay, so
I don't know if she's
pretty
supposed
much-
to get the.
So
Pretty
as
much when
you
you graph this,
notice, we
you're
have
gonna graph
some
the
experts
original
in the
line,
room
extrapolate
over
the linear
here,
portion of it
and we're going
to
to have
time
an
zero,
excellent
and
class
then you use those two
by
values.
talking about special populations.
Use those
So
two
in
values to
Canvas,
subtract them, and whatever number
you
you
should
get, you got the
have
residual line of that value.
access to
These are those.
things that with fish bones. And you did work with your patient, right?
What are those?
So teams 10, 11, and 12, your focus is on answering those questions for your pediatric patient. Teams 13 through 14, you are attacking the pregnant patient. Team 15, you are working on the obese patient. Team 16, 17, 18, you're working on the geriatric patient. You're going to answer the same questions that you did for your normal patient. Your normal patient was there
What are you
to help
fucking
you
answering
kind of
normal
synthesize the differences when you compare and contrast. Cool?
No.
Let's do
I want to throw something at her, man.
30 minutes.
So we're not doing this.
I don't know what's going on.
So
I don't even know if it did
throw
number
this
one
out for
right.
now. This is due on Sunday. And we're supposed to be working on which ones?
It's we're doing the first. We're doing the peds patient.
Giving it all to you.
I don't know, like where she's getting that.
The fitness center basic test.
The residual.
That's
important, too.
I ignored this.
I was just subtracting something, but she wasn't doing the math. Like,
Why we get emails every second from somebody at the school, I swear to
I
God.
don't know. And it's like deadline today at 5. If you want to do anything.
Yeah, I know. If you would like to sign up to volunteer in this, you have exactly 10 minutes to email me back. Otherwise, it closes.
We have a survey for you to fill out, due in 3 seconds.
Or you get a 0.
Thanks for your responses.
Mandatory apping meeting. Right now, come be.
You missed it. So you missed
Mandatory apping
it.
meeting T-minus 1 week ago.
If you weren't here, sorry. No happy birthday.
If you weren't here, sorry, you were in Oklahoma for the rest of your happy.
Oh no.
For line since you have a week to get it.
But there's a 2-week waiting period.
Yes.
And all expenses are out of pocket.
Oh my god. If I'm in Oklahoma for all of it, then that's not bad.
We've increased the interest rate on your loans.
Is there like a piece of paper for this one? Or no.
I just printed them out.
Yeah. So it's a baby.
Yeah.
No, it's not even. It's a 9-year-old.
Is that posted somewhere?
Right? It's a
So
9-year-old.
yeah, 9.
So she has more water. Because there's more increased total body water. Was it in the road dog book? Was he 9 years old back then?
It screwed for infants and children. It messes with if they're renally excreted drugs. It alters the half-life and distribution is altered due to reduction in drug binding to plasma albumin and different body compositions.
Reduced binding to plasma? Well, yeah, because they have less.
That's all I wrote down for ADME and kids out of the book.
That's at chapter 20.
Oh, shoot. I'm still working. It's something I would like to improve on in my next rotation site.
She's 9 years old. So should be considered. I realize it's less dangerous. This is the stupidest thing.
You guys should be working on something that looks like this for your considered patient. At the top, they'll tell you which patient each sheet belongs to. You're going to answer these 4 or 5 questions using whatever resources you have, whatever experience you're bringing to the classroom. And then we're going to do a gallery walk. So I'm going to put sheet numbers on these whiteboards and you're going to do a little presentation.
That'll be.
Is that?
No.
Put me on.
So we have two experts who are clinicians in the room that can help facilitate your thinking.
Well, we have 0 teachers in the room.
They decide on our house.
Yeah, there's 2 experts in here, but 0 teachers. So actually, there's like half a classroom full of teachers right now, which is just us. If I did this in tutoring, I get fired.
Whoa. You gonna explain that to me later?
Y'all are just getting started, but anything I can answer for you here at this table so far?
I don't know what we're doing yet, but I'm trying to get there.
Okay.
I'm trying to get there.
Circle back. Let me know if y'all need any help.
It's chapter 22, correct?
Yeah, I need to get that.
I need to take a picture of this or something since we only had 2.
Sorry,
I'll take pictures. Sound like my mom back when I used to ask for candy from the store. No, you can't call.
Enrique said this was a shit show. She was 100% serious.
She said that too?
Yeah. I asked her how frustrated I was going to be. She said, you're going to have to leave when you're done to decompress for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Pediatric animals are not miniature adults, nor belong to a homogeneous population. Anatomical development and video okay.
So what are we doing?
Few tables. So she's considered.
Your group may be selected.
Maybe will be.
It's got this
So they're giving her diagnosis is peritonitis, right? Yeah, and then they're treating her with Zosyn. So describe the physiological changes for the patient that may affect ADME that should be considered with given the diagnosis and the treatment.
What's like the main chapter? 5 or 22?
That one is in 23.
23?
Because there's also 22 and 23. We're supposed to read 22. I didn't read 22.
I didn't open 23.
Everyone, as you're going through these cases, I'll make one brief announcement as I did in the class on Tuesday. It is absolutely unusable, and you are 100% encouraged to look up and find some sort of primary literature source to support whatever you decide to do with dosing in this patient. It's a great skill to have, so as you're evaluating, do a literature search and see what you can find.
How can... Okay, so first thing is describe the physiological changes. Yeah. For the patient that may affect ADME. That's
Peritonitis is inflammation of the membrane lining the abdominal wall.
Yep.
The children emptying and transit time is still increasing up to 4 years of age to mature. The higher pH and...
Are you on access pharmacy?
Yeah.
What's the name of the book? Applied Biopharmaceutics and Influenza. Let me go in there and look at like pediatric considerations and stuff. I don't want to get embarrassed whenever we go up there and like we don't have anything.
Look, I have no idea what the problem is. What you're asking is so fucking bad that I want to kill myself.
I don't know what to say, but I don't want us to go up there and have nothing.
I kind of hope the whole class goes up there and goes, yeah, I don't know what you want from me.
This dude compounded in the chemo room yesterday. I was in the IV room the whole day, like, garbed up and all that shit. Man.
I bet you're sweaty.
Yeah, I wasn't sweaty because
It's cold in there.
I still sweat.
they keep it at 62 in that 62 degrees.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I had goosebumps the whole time. I get those goosebumps every time. Nah, I'm just kidding. Dude, he compounded arsenic from a vial.
Peritonitis.
You hear that, bro?
Huh?
He compounded arsenic from a vial for cancer, for melanoma.
Dang, boy.
I see geriatric and oh, it's module 3. Module 3.
Under what? The same book?
Same book, chapter 23. Then. Okay. And it's for special population, geriatric, obese, and pediatric, and it's module number 3.
Yeah, she's 9 years old, so.
All right, let's see what it says here.
Gentamicin or diazepam.
It is 4-8.
Guys, the book says pediatric subjects are not miniature adults.
We're doing children.
Well, they have an increased volume of distribution. They have more water.
Yeah, no, but she's 9, so they said that children are. Because that's for neonates and infants up to the first 6 months of life. She's 9, so only 60%. Same as an adult. Ish.
What was the question? Like, it's so vague.
Okay, here we go.
Every
they're
non-farm
bloating.
within a 4-mile radius is standing in the way of our bathrooms.
Who?
Every non-farm within a 4-mile radius.
Jesus.
I don't know what the fuck they're doing anymore.
How old is this patient?
9.
Damn it, because I was about to say, it says in neonates, gastric pH is greater than 4 and gastric and intestinal transit time are faster in irregular, immature biliary function. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, put. This is one thing that can affect agony.
They have peritonitis. They have that fluid compartment.
In children, the emptying and transit time, like in the GI tract, gastric emptying and intestinal transit time are increasing. But it says up to 4 years of age to mature. I don't know. They're 9 though. I can't find anything for people who are.
Any questions here? Can we help you all in any way? Remind me which patient you've been assigned.
Pediatric peritonitis.
Hepatic metabolism is greater in children 3 to 10 than adults.
That's a great idea, talking about the hepatic metabolism. You also have to think about how hepatic metabolism changes along with the age of the child. So a child at 1 day versus 1 week versus 1 month versus 6 months versus 1 year, things change rather drastically. So make sure you relate that. It's a great start. Relate that to the age of the child and your problem.
Okay. Yeah, so fast GI transit time.
So I think it's going to increase, right?
Yeah, increased, yeah.
So, what age group is it?
It doesn't give me an age group. It just says the fast transit time reduces the rate and extent of absorption in neonates, infants, and children.
Hold on. What's that part? I'm going to just look at it from here.
Okay, so under
What up, Mindy? What did you want to say?
I don't know. It's
Looks
under,
like you
if
wanted
you
to
type
say
in
something.
age hyphen dependent differences, you'll find it. It's like the second to last sentence in the whole thing above drug
Everything I'm
distribution.
saying,
The
they're
fast.
repeating.
Huh?
I said this like 10 minutes ago.
I'm sorry.
So I'm just gonna shut up.
I apologize.
She frustrates me because like I don't even understand app 1 that we just worked on literally 30 minutes ago, and then she comes and gives us this shit which has nothing to do with what we were just working on.
Complicating the issue, you know.
I heard you
It's just
saying
like
about it and stuff.
constant confusion every time she teaches.
Okay, so
That's your chance to reduce your rate of state or absorption.
I mean, are we gonna do peritoneal dialysis on this kid or something? Just to pull that fluid out?
just put increased SIP 304, 2C9, 2C19 activity.
Like, do they have ascites, basically? Because they said bloating and peritonitis.
I would think they just have a massive infection.
The word pediatrics diet.
Reduce UGT activity.
Did you guys reduce the dose
decreases.
required for this age patient? It's going to be higher based on their body weight as compared to adolescents and adults.
You're saying that the
Is that? It's one of the reading. It's in the reading here. Because the clinical observations are consistent with hepatic metabolism in age-dependent pediatric patients. Hepatic metabolism in children 3 to 10 years of age is greater than that of
Did you
adults.
find SULT has increased activity in children?
So they have greater
Yes.
Decreased
hepatic
Yes,
UGT.
in between age and 10, and we are dealing with 9 years.
Increased SIP
So,
384, 2C9, 2C19.
so they're going to need higher dose.
Rapid increase in glomerular filtration, tubular secretion, tubular reabsorption.
It's from the notes, chapter 20.
God damn, I'm getting so fucking frustrated. Where?
Chapter 23.
Where the hell is that at? Let me guess, she didn't fucking
No, 8
post
to
it.
12 months.
I gotta go
No,
to.
you got to
Where's
go
it
to
at?
the access
I'm
pharmacy.
tired of that shit.
I'll
Yeah.
leave that out.
I'm so old.
You get that one? You get that point, Abby?
Yes.
So they're going to need higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so what
total body water is in children.
Oh, that's if it's a phase 1 drug.
Yeah, that's true. For phase 1 drug. So we need to know which drug we're dealing with. Yeah, it's phase 1 drug.
You may have reduced levels of drugs that use those SIP enzymes that use those SIP enzymes to be cleared and to be metabolized. UGT has reduced activity. Glucuronosyltransferase, or UGT, partakes in phase 2 reactions.
So do we need to consider?
Yeah, it's a phase 2 reaction. So
How are we doing? What do you want? Pediatric?
Yeah.
We need to consider each of these medications. So do we already know the one we're giving?
It's Zosyn.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say we.
So we need to know
if it's a substrate for CYP3A4, CYP2C9, or 2C19, you'll have lower levels of it. It'll be metabolized quicker.
Yeah,
But if
the
it
high
undergoes,
metabolizes.
Yes, and pizzas. Good time.
I
Any
said
questions?
metabolizers.
So
Yeah, and those three CYP enzymes have
So many-
increased
number one,
the
draws.
activity of those
Yeah.
CYP enzymes. But
What are your questions?
if you have
We don't even know yet.
That's okay.
We're basically at
if
the
you have
very
a drug
beginning,
that
just trying
undergoes
to.
phase 2
Yeah.
metabolism
So what are
Figure
your
out.
physiologic
That's what we're
considerations?
trying to figure out. If this drug right here
is phase 2, phase 1, phase 2.
We want to find out what
because
type
we
of
can
drug
write all
it
of that, but we have to relate it to what she's doing.
Okay.
Okay, for Zosyn,
Phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah. So don't worry so much about the drug. Worry about what they're
Oh,
asking.
they have decreased
it's
renal
like
What are your
function.
physiologic changes that can affect you?
6.4 mils per minute.
What symptoms does she have?
Oh, yeah, most of it's excreted.
She has fever, nausea, fever,
Peritonitis.
bloating.
Okay, does fever matter at all? For Eddie, no. Does bloating matter really at all?
Yeah.
No.
Really?
What about nausea and vomiting? Yes. Which factors that affect?
Absorbent.
Absorption, sure. Right. So absorption is certainly. What about distribution?
Wouldn't the bloating affect that? If it's like
Bloating's like air,
Oh.
right? Versus swelling, which is more fluid based.
Yeah, I didn't know if the bloating was from peritonitis. Like,
These are more. Well, I mean, it's the peritoneal cavity, right? Yeah. So the bloating is usually air based rather than fluid based. So not always.
okay.
Distribution in this matter, we're talking about the food or the drug? So food could affect it if she's not able to keep aiming down. Yeah. Right? Is those in PO or IV?
I thought from my
You
IV.
said what?
IV.
IV, right?
Yeah.
So does nausea and vomiting unit factor into its absorption? No. Does that mean that it's not a physiological consideration? No. Because it's still things you think about that affect your head. Right. So distribution. What's the biggest thing you guys are always thinking about with distribution of the drug? What's the biggest parameter?
Volume of distribution? Like the volume of
Yeah.
distribution?
So do you think the volume of distribution would be higher or lower? Lower. Because
Higher.
of the vomiting, maybe the water is going to come.
Got to be higher
They have
It's
more
already
TBW,
because they have greater total body water.
so there's more.
So if the drug is hydrophilic and you have total body water, you need more drug to get to the same level of concentration.
It would distribute more.
I assume it's hydrophilic because it says that it's mainly clear renal area.
Wouldn't assume,
Yeah.
just for the sake of don't assume, but
Yeah.
it's hydrophilic.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Right. So if it's lipophilic and they have a higher volume of distribution, they have higher total body water, how would the lipophilic drug be effective? Would you need more or less of the lipophilic drug? That's potential. Yeah. What about metabolism? What do you consider in metabolism?
SIP.
SIP enzyme. So, do you think that a 9-year-old has the full adult functionality of a SIP enzyme compared to? No. Do you think they have more or less?
On some SIP enzymes, it said increased activity, and then it declines with age.
So you have no which one.
SIP 3A4, SIP 2C9, and 2C19.
So
None of
they
those
vary,
are-
right? Depending on what age you are at. They can be variable, right? Yeah. But that is another parameter, right? So they may not be at the level of functionality that a typical adult is. Right. What about elimination? What do you think about with elimination? Do you think eliminated by the kidney?
Phase 2 metabolism and phase 1 metabolism.
That's metabolism. What about
Yeah,
elimination?
that's true.
So kidneys, so renal excretion. How else are these drugs eliminated?
Renally. It's eliminated.
Just said renal. Yes. Or how else are they eliminated? So renal is one. How else do you get drugs out of the body?
Poop them out or pee them out.
Guys are thinking too hard. How are drugs eliminated from the body? Renal,
Renal, feces.
feces. Do kids pee and poop more or less frequently?
More.
Do you think that would affect elimination of the drug? Potentially.
Potentially.
But those are factors to consider.
Okay.
It does go out.
So those are all things that we would consider in evaluating.
It does eliminate that.
And you talk about how you'd overcome those.
0.7.
Okay.
So like maybe giving more or less?
So how would you overcome nausea and vomiting because of feeling medication?
Maybe change right to administration.
I am in the butt. So what? In the butt. Right. Distribution. So if you have a higher volume of distribution for a hydrophilic drug, what would you need to do? You possibly need to increase the dose to get the same level of concentration. Right? Another factor of distribution that people don't often think about.
Okay, so in the next 11 minutes, go ahead and start writing on the board as designated, and you guys can bio break it in the meantime as well. So please be back and have everything written on the board by 10:45.
Outside of volume distribution.
What about the
Protein binding. Yeah. So with protein binding, do you think that kids have the same concentrations or levels of albumin compared to potentially not, right? Babies especially. So that also is a physiological consideration. Can you overcome protein binding? They're not going to automatically just inject you for protein. No. So if the drug is heavily protein bound, you don't have as much protein, that means that there's more free concentration for it out there, which exposes you to increased toxicity. So you would decrease the dose. So maybe you have a higher volume of distribution, but you have less protein binding. So you have to come back to that. All of these things are factors that right, and how you would overcome it, adjusting the dose, adjusting the frequency. So if they're burning through the drug faster, then you get the drug more frequently. If they don't burn through the drug faster, you get the drug less frequently. Make sense?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Summarize it, right? Or something like that.
We're over there. She put a number.
So what's the first part on there?
These are like the changes that affect AD and basically everything you just told us.
The absorption, like for the other one that he was talking about, that we should consider was like
It's not a substrate for any of those enzymes, right?
Who's talking about the nauseous. If she's nauseated, we want to maybe change her diet.
It does undergo phase 2
Like
metabolism, though.
If she's nauseated,
because it's renal, right?
PO drug, you would switch it to IV. So we should consider, don't even
you
look
have
at
to
the
give them
drug,
less
but
of a
just
dose,
look at
right?
why. Because
Because
that's
you
the
decrease
decrease.
because you decrease
We
the
don't need the
activity.
diagnosis or the treatment. So the physiological.
But it doesn't say on here what you would decrease it to, right?
Not for these two, because this is just a vague, broad overview. Changes.
Said that they have nausea vomiting. The kid did. Did it say that the kid had nausea vomiting?
Yes.
So that's our absorption one, I guess, that we would switch.
Does she just have a fever? Did you say her stomach hurts, right?
She does have fever, but he said that doesn't have anything to do with that.
Does it say that? He said that we have to do a dose for this.
Determine the most appropriate dose? Oh, yeah. The last one. You can look at Pete's dose.
Do you think she has appendicitis or peritonitis?
Peritonitis.
Okay. So that is... Do we know her weight? Because this drug is weight-based.
66 pounds.
Okay, so it's going to be 100 milligrams of Zosyn per kilogram
30 kicks.
per dose. Okay, so yeah, the dosing for children, oh, that's under 42. So that's to refer to adult dosing.
Good answers instead of.
Okay, so the distribution fact that we were supposed to be talking about was the total body weight, right? Or what the body part, and whether the drug is
it total body water or volume of distribution?
Well, the total body water is higher, so the volume of distribution for hydrophilic drug, you would get a higher dose. For lipophilic drug, you would get lower dose.
Yeah.
And then metabolism, I don't remember what he said about that.
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
It's increased, I think, right?
Talk about the enzymes.
So, what was the distribution again?
was saying that in children, high body water, high total
So if
body
you had a
water.
hydrophilic drug, it would
We're
require.
gonna need lesser dose.
Okay, in the case of hydrophilic drug.
We're gonna give a lesser dose.
So there's a lot of stuff
So as
that makes us
compared to
want to increase the
adults,
dose, but then like the distribution makes us
And
want to
for
increase the dose.
hydrophilic
Metabolism
drug,
makes us want to increase the
for hydrophilic
oxidation
drug,
too, but
lipophilic drug, we need a
that
lower
protein
dose.
decreases it.
Hydrophobic drug?
Hydrophilic drug, higher dose.
It would be weird to give a kid more antibiotics
You
than
just said both ways.
A
You said it
hydrophilic
both
drug
ways.
and total body water, which is high.
You know, we're gonna need higher dose because
In
they're
a
not gonna go
hydrophilic
into the
drug?
tissue.
But you said the same. You said the opposite word while she was trying to write.
Lipophilic,
Because
No,
all
like-
Mexico
Okay, what about
necessitates
hydrophilic?
Hydrophilic, yes. In the
the same.
yeah, you know,
Well,
so
that
what
kinda makes
she's
sense.
reading
I think
weight
we're gonna
is
need
greater
higher
than
dose.
That's probably because
What do you
this
think?
stuff,
in the
right?
hydrophilic,
I mean,
Because
in the
the volume
neonatal.
Normally
is
we
higher,
want a lower
so we're
dose,
gonna need
but
what's
all
the
these
normal
factors
dose.
kind of
Because
make
it's
us
not going to go
I
into
know
the
it's
tissue.
there isn't.
That's
You
all.
understand? It's not going to go into the tissue.
So it's like we
And
increase
it
the
means
dose,
it's
but
gonna
then we
be
decrease it.
diluted in the larger volume, in the central
Because there's so
volume.
much water, so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
would need to give a higher concentration in order to make it.
Oh, we're doing it over. Okay, yeah.
What's the dose?
They have pediatric doses over here.
I know, but the pediatric dose, she's greater than 9 years old and she weighs more than 40 kilos. It says refer to adult dosing, which makes sense because this one you have to increase the dose, right?
Because
Okay,
it's a
so we're
lipophilic.
saying lipophilic, hydrophilic drug. Okay,
It's a
moving on.
hydrophilic
Hydrophilic.
Hydrophilic. It
We
can't be
can just start
lipophilic
writing
and hydrophilic.
At the same time.
You can't do that.
Oh yeah, can't. It's empathic or
You
whatever.
start writing and you'll figure out the dose.
Yeah.
You have a pencil in
You're saying we need a higher dose than that?
That's why we're using adult dose.
So this is gonna
Just
be
adult dose, but
So we just use the normal adult dose?
because you have to increase the index.
So is this considered a mild to moderate infection or severe infection?
It's just a mild to moderate.
Let's just do the adult dose then. Let's just do the adult dose. It's higher than the pediatric dose and we need a higher dose than the pediatric dose anyway.
What's the dose?
No, we're finding. So we just did it in terms Which one?
E. They have.
These are
They
like
have
traditional.
so that might.
what is
might
that?
hurt.
Option peritonitis.
It's the same thing as a traditional dose, like at the very top, 3.375.
30 something, 31, 32, 33.
3.375 grams every 6 hours for a week or something.
You had your alpha and beta.
I used that through too. I gotta go through.
Well, wait until we finish this presentation.
So from this graph,
What is B? 9 point what?
9.2.
Okay. So conceptually, and if you guys don't mind sharing with your team when they get back.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is like so this one
Times
will
zero.
put, okay.
Okay. So what happens when I put t equals 0? E to the 0 is 1. Same thing, right? So then I've got B, which is 9.2 times 1. We have A times 1, and we got C. So we only have one unknown variable now, right? How am I going to solve for A?
Just subtract whatever we have. Subtract this from it.
So what is that?
Is that there is?
22 percent.
Okay. And this is at times 0, so we're going to put 22.8.
Is that where the residual line starts?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
That's A. And then you'll continue that thought. So once you determine your alpha and beta, I think you had it on a different sheet. But you can, at point 3, go up. What is that point? About 9. So 9 minus 28.6 is what? 18 point something?
Yes.
So you have 18 point something at the same time. Like that.
Yeah. Why did we do the subtraction?
Yep, you subtracted. The same way that you subtracted
this from C.
To get this A.
So your time is going to stay constant.
So like on the next point, what would you do? Like if you went to like
You show me.
0.91.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that'd be like
Okay. Uh-huh.
there, and I would subtract, what was that, like
8.8 or something?
8.8, and I subtract that from this?
Yep.
Okay.
Now you've got 3 points. You got at times 0, 0.38, and 0.91.
Okay.
And that's your purest distribution.
So it'd be like something like that.
Probably
If we were
steep.
to, oh yeah, that's
Makes
kind of
sense?
weird angle on that.
But because this is so far to the left, we can assume distribution. I strategically picked points that was like super close to times 0. You okay?
I think so.
Please explain it one more time. This
Like you take
because
this point right here.
she just started.
Start at this time. Like I'm gonna do the first one at 0.38. So we started like 0.38.
So I want to start from here first. At that time 0. That's if I get this one, I should be able to.
So 0 was like 9. I don't know where that actually came from. Oh, we extrapolated that out.
Okay, from here.
Yeah, we didn't actually calculate.
Yeah.
We just literally just drew a point and said, oh, times 0 is 9.
Okay, so from there we get C.
And so they subtracted this 9. So whatever you get on this line right here, you subtract from the line above it.
Is it from here to get this points?
Yeah, so you follow it up and you go, that's like...
Okay, maybe that's what we do here to get A.
And then so for the next one, whatever your time is, and let's say I came up to here, I should be able to subtract from that point whatever is right here, so 8 minus whatever this point was right here. And it would give me like, I guess that third point was
okay, so how
17,
do you
let's say. It'd be like 11 or something like that.
So this line is the main thing that I'm going to be considering?
Yeah, these two lines. It's really the difference between this point and this point, and you'll graph it right here, you know.
Which point? This?
Yeah, whatever this point and this point is. The difference between this and this is like right here. It's weird because it's on semi-log. Like, say that's the third point, which is like 1.8 and 17.4. So if I go like 1.8 and to like 17.4, that makes sense. So that's kind of where that is.
Okay, on this graph.
Mm-hmm. So on this, it's at 1.8. If I follow it down this graph right here, that's like 8. So I would do 17.4, which is what this is right here. Yeah. Minus 8.
Minus 8.
Which
so
would be like 11 or something like that. So if I follow that over, that does fit on this graph. So I'll graph that one.
So if I want to do the next one, I'll come here at time of 1. Let me say at time of 4.4.
Mm-hmm.
So which is going to be somewhere here. So I'm going to go all the way up here, find the value here. Then, and this one too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and subtract.
Was 8.73 was the concentration at that point.
8.3. So
and the concentration of whatever 4.4 was.
So I'm going to link it here.
Mm-hmm. That was like.
That's a 6.4.
So
6.4 minus
so minus 6.4 or whatever, we would get like, let's just say 2. So that means the new point for the residual will be way down here. Okay. At like 2 and 4.4 would be like right here, and that would connect back up to here.
Okay. So whatever I get from that difference, I'll come and subtract it from the concentration of this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Confusing, but it's like we follow it over here at every time. These guys subtract a difference, and that's what the new concentration graph would be for this one. So it's like this is just a graph of the difference between all these values over here and here, and we just graph that. I don't know why. It's like we're trying to find new y coordinates for every time.
So the way we do this one, She said we know our alpha and beta. I don't know. Maybe can we go back again and get alpha and beta after knowing A and B? Probably. At a different time.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how to get that without calculating it.
So we need to calculate
I think that goes back to those formulas. I hope the writing's right. Because they used my notes, I didn't even know that. Oh well. If we're wrong, we're wrong. Well, like these formulas right here, I think this is what her hint was. We have A and B. We could technically use this. Or we need AUC. Yeah, that gets me. I don't know how to find this and that. Unless it comes from the graph or something.
The announcement she made the one time. Is it like exam solved to know your strengths?
Oh yeah, she's gonna do that. Okay. I really have to think about it.
From the exam solved?
Let us start off with Team 10 since you guys are at your board. So you can anticipate a variety of questions from myself as well as Dr. Reiner and Dr. Fenn. For my stuff on your exam, you will see probably a mixture of nonlinear, which we'll get to next week, some multiple compartments, and some special pops. So if you want to take notes and pictures, that would be probably a fruitful way to study. Team 10, start us off. Your audience is this way. So we're going to have to turn around and speak this way. Hello. Thank you for making eye contact with me.
All right, Team 10, we're giving the pediatrics. Let's start with the physiological changes, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. You can read from there, right? So, on distribution, you look at the total body water, and the drug is protein binding. When you have a lot of water, the child, as a child, pediatrics have more total body water. So in that sense, you won't have much. There will be more distribution, and the drug will bind because there's less protein to bind. And it also depends on the drug. Metabolism goes with maturity of our organs, like liver and kidney. Excretion, intake versus output, food, all those affect the drug excretion. What can be overcome through absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion? If we talk about absorption, you will talk about alternative route of administration. Distribution, you look at the dose, you might decrease the dose due to the fact that the drug is very hydrophilic. Metabolism, start with low dose and then check output and adjust accordingly. Excretion, start with a low dose, check output and also adjust as needed. Some other effect that you will see on this drug will be some altered metabolism and excretion, and also should be aware of the free drug, which can lead to toxicity. Source, permanent, and package insert. For this pediatric, it was hard to find the dosing, but we were able to get this. You dose 300 milligrams or 3 grams. That should be done IV, Q, 8 hours or 7 to 10 days. Thank you.
Team 11, what would you like to add to Team 10's presentation? I have to take advantage of the limited time I have with you. This is second to the last class, so.
What are you presenting?
I'm doing the same thing. She just really doing the same thing, and I'm funny.
So your sources look a little different.
From the package insert.
And what else you got?
You get the source from the package insert.
What about these?
We also use pharmacokinetics to get the rules.
So you made a note of nausea, vomiting, total body
Because the
water.
volume distribution
Talk a little
is
bit
increased.
more how
So
that's
it's distributing more instead of going where it's targeting.
how does it relate to boring this?
We said that the patient, you know, they had,
All right, go for it.
so our pediatric patient had symptoms of nausea and vomiting, and so that affected the absorption of the drug. You can't force a, you know, a pill down on the antibiotic that way, so we overcame that through IV use.
Does dosing come in a different form?
You can do
That's my knowledge.
Nice work. And how about you guys?
I noticed that they're when they talk about distribution, they said that you would decrease the drug dose due to the hydrophilic nature of the drug, but pediatrics have an increased total body water, increased volume and distribution, so we'd actually have to increase the dose due to that, so that we can target the area that we're treating a little better, because it'll be distributing more.
What type of drug is dosing? Is it hydrophilic or lipophilic? Anything else you guys want to add that the other two groups didn't? I like your number 3, or 3 that you underlined. 2? That was different.
Oh, of course it does.
The kid's pooping like crazy. What role does that play potentially?
More
Faster elimination.
Increase elimination, so we'd also have to increase the dose based on that.
Possibly. And now the expert in the room is kind of like shut his stuff.
All right, so pediatric pharmacokinetics, you guys already had the best case because kids are awesome and it's super fun and it's really interesting. So just kind of getting to the basics, right? When you classify pediatric populations, different stages of life means there are different PK parameters for each stage of life. And so your neonate, your itty bitty babies, so let me see, I'm going to steal this water bottle for a second. Here is, almost to scale, your neonates, right? So your patient, your neonates, about this big, including this much water. Right, they're big bags of water. I call them water balloons because their skin is super thin, like a water balloon, and they're made up of 80% water, give or take. So they're just giant bags of water, right? So they're giant water balloons. And by giant, I don't mean that at all. But neonates are typically classified as the first 4 weeks of life, 0 to 28 days, or if they were born earlier than 38 weeks gestational age, right? So think about your term babies. Your full-term babies are 40 weeks. I have kids that are 22 weeks and 24 weeks. So those kids are neonates until they hit that 40-week gestational age, at which point they're called term babies. Right? Your infants are typically 1 month to 1 year. And so this can vary depending on which institution you're following, which guidelines you're following, which classification schemes, things like that. Typically for me, an infant is 1 month to 1 year, and then a toddler is 1 to 5 years. Some people think an infant should go to 2 years. Some people say a child is just 2 to 12. It's variable, but there are different stages based on these PK parameters, and how I tend to follow them. So toddler is 1 to 5 years. You know, 5 years old kid, right? And then child is 6 to 12, and adolescent is 13 to 18. So talking about absorption as your first PK parameter. Here, kids have decreased stomach acidity, especially the little babies. And a lot of this factors into these little babies and the young kids. Whereas when you get up to that child age, that adolescent age, you're almost functioning at adult capacity in the sense of, your pharmacokinetic parameters. So your stomach acidity is no longer lower, it's usually high when you're born, right? That's why we get that reflux and everything else. We need that to be a higher pH. So if you have a drug that requires an acidic environment to get activated or broken down, then that might not happen as well with kids, right? Keep in mind, kids are itty bitty, right? So when you're born, you only have maybe 6 total feet of intestine compared to adults who have like 30 feet of intestine, right? So the distance for transport is much shorter. Not only that, how often do kids and babies poop? More frequently or less? All the time, right? It's a great time to be a parent, having those baby diapers. It's just like nonstop. So there's increased motility, increased gastric empty. Right? The other thing to think about too is your absorption rate. So there's a reason we never use topical products in kids unless we absolutely have to, like kids and babies. Reason being is their skin is paper thin and they don't always have the full barrier there that they need for protection. So if you put a topical product on there, that absorption rate might go up much higher, and then they get systemic effects because more products can get absorbed from the skin into the bloodstream and the body, right? The gut can also be influenced that way because it's a shorter gut and it transitions faster, maybe they don't absorb as quickly. And then if you have to do an IM injection, these kids don't have the muscle necessarily. And so that can affect it into the consideration as well. So we talk about distribution. Here's a nice little table looking at the volume of distribution for patients. And premature babies and full-term babies, we're looking at 70 to 80% body water. Right? So for a hydrophilic drug, if you use that in an elderly person who's got 54% total body water compared to a preemie baby, 80%, right? That's a big difference. It's what, almost 60% more volume distribution, right? Based on that water content. And so the drug distribution can be different based on the primitives. Also looking at the fat content. Babies, they have that brown fat, right? They don't have that supply that we older adults tend to have. And so the fat content can vary based on your age as well. And then protein content, again, once you get older and you eat more protein, that can increase as well. So between the increased water volume and the decreased fat volume, these are factors that you need to consider when your drug, whether it's hydrophilic or lipophilic. And then protein binding variability. So who can tell me what the difference is between 98% protein bound and 99% protein bound? 1%, right? Not your question, promise. But if you go from 99% protein bound to 98% protein bound, you're going from 1% free drug to 2% free drug. You are doubling the concentration of free drug in your body. It's a small change when you look at it that way, the other way. When you look at it from the free drug concentration in the body, that's doubling the concentration of free drug in the body. And so kids, especially babies, they don't have the albumin levels that adults do. They're 1.4 or 1.6. If you're lucky, they hit 2. Right? What's your typical albumin range? Do you guys know?
3.5 to 4.
Like 3.5 to 4, right? And so if you have a drug that's heavily protein bound and you don't have your typical albumin, concentrations in the body, then that drug, there's going to be more drug that's free. There's more drug that's free. It's floating around. It can cause increased concentrations or it can lead to increased toxicities. Right? So, as I was telling one of the groups here, I had a neurologic team in the NICU, and they always ordered a total phenytoin level. Always, always, always. In NICU babies. And have you guys learned the phenytoin correction calculation? Okay, so this will be very important next week. Hey, preview. You need phenytoin binds to albumin. If your albumin level is below that 3.5 to 4, you have to correct for the free phenytoin level. So I would do that all the time, and I would have concentrations 2 to 3 times what they're supposed to. And every time I went back to the neurological team, I said, get a free phenytoin, not a total phenytoin, because that matters. All right. So metabolism, and you guys can learn more about phenytoin next week because it's just a crazy drug. It's fascinating. Metabolism. So predominantly it's driven by the liver, so phase 1, right? Your CYP enzymes. So kids aren't usually at the adult level when it comes to CYP enzyme functionality. So depending on the particular CYP enzyme, its ability to reach those adult functionality can be anywhere from weeks to years, right? And it depends on the stage of life. Sometimes you get increased adult functionality, then it decreases again, comes back down, right? If you have a deficiency in one of these enzymes, you could lead to toxicity if it burns through the drug quickly. You could have ineffectiveness, right? So the drug could possibly not work. And then phase 2, your conjugation, your sulfation, your glucuronidation. So all of these pathways, they're not necessarily as commonly considered because, typically we're able to CYP enzymes, which most drugs go through. But sometimes these are the main pathways, especially in the little kids. So you guys know what Tylenol? You know what Tylenol is? How is Tylenol metabolized? Which enzyme? 2E1, right? So kids don't necessarily have great functionality of that. So instead, it goes through the sulfation pathway, right? So instead of you and I, when we go, when we take our Tylenol, it goes through 2E1, everything's tickety-boo. For kids, that pathway gets saturated pretty easily, and so sulfation becomes the main pathway of metabolism. here's a nice little colored table that you have to memorize every single thing. Just to give you an idea, so the fetus has a normal function level of enzymes. What do you think that is? What? It's the mom, right? Mom takes care of it. So you don't necessarily need to have functionality of these enzymes because mom's taking care of all that stuff, right? But when they're born, all of a sudden things start to kick in high gear. And in the first week, things are increasing, right? Within that first month, you're getting a lot of function of these very common CYP enzymes, right? So within the first year of life, look at how much change there is from birth to 1 year, right? There's a lot of variability, there's a lot of change. And so the beauty thing is when you guys get those doses for all these medications, we've already analyzed all this to come up with those doses, right? Conversely, who's ever heard of CYP3A7? Probably haven't, right? It's, so adult, this is 1%, this is 99%, right? So it's like what, 900% compared to 100%, so it's 9 times as prevalent, as functional as an adult in the fetus. Within the first week, that jumps up to what, 16, 17% give or take? So 160, 170% more functionality from CYP3A7. And then it decreases significantly to adult levels. We don't usually worry about the CYP3A7 enzyme, right? It's 3A4, 3A5, sometimes you see 3A, right? But just as an example, this is an enzyme that we don't consider a lot of because we don't see it in terms of functionality in adults compared to kids. And so if we had a drug that went through the CYP3A7 pathway and you're dosing it in a neonate, you'd have to use some really crazy wild concentrations, right? Again, just things to consider. Here's a beautiful table of phase 2 and phase 2 pathways. So again, just kind of showing you guys, look at the variation with some of these. So we've got heavy that sulfation pathway that decreases towards adulthood. We've got some that are consistent, this EPH pathway and acetyltransferase pathway. These are all pretty steady, but they can vary depending on age. Right? And these are just looking at the first year of life compared to adults. So because of all these metabolic influences, we can have extended half-lives, which means you give the drug more frequently or less frequently. Less frequently, right? Sure. You might have longer saturation periods. So if you need to activate a medication and it has to go through a certain pathway, you might saturate that enzymatic pathway quicker, which means it's going to take longer for that drug to take effect. Conversely, if you have an active drug and it needs to get broken down, you might need to give less drug because it's going to be in the system longer, right? So both of these can influence your toxicity. And so ultimately, typically, we dose kids lower than adults. There are some certain exceptions, and they're very well documented, but we'll dose kids lower compared to adults. And then we also increase the dosing intervals, usually because we need to worry about elimination. All right, so for the first 7 days of life, kids don't necessarily have a great measurement of renal function. Right, so they have decreased renal capacity because the first 7 days of life, it mirrors the mother's serum creatinine. Right, then it usually improves significantly. And anybody's had a kid knows those kids pee in diapers all the time. It's a good thing, right? And so we'll measure your urine output, a kid's urine output by weighing the diapers. So just grab a diaper, throw it on, tar it, throw it on, put on the weight diaper. And it's really interesting. I mean, I learned it more this year when I had to change my daughter's diaper. First thing in the morning, that thing is heavy. I mean, it is like, holy cow, heavy. Well, at least she's beaten, so that's good news, right? But kids typically burn through, they have increased kidney function comparatively, but not necessarily the size of the kidney is the same, so it can be disproportionately smaller. So you guys all make a fist, that's your second kidney, right, roughly speaking. So with kids, not only is the kidney smaller based on their fist, but the tubules within them, the nephrons, things like that, those are also much, much smaller, so those can be factored into consideration. And then decreased bile secretion, so you guys are going to learn this next year with ID. You don't give ceftriaxone to neonates. Period, end of story. If I ever get to teach you guys that and I put it on there, you do not give ceftriaxone to neonates. Reason being, they don't secrete as much bile and it can lead to biliary sludging and complications. So absolutely positively, 45 weeks or younger, gestational age, you do not give ceftriaxone. Reason being, it can affect elimination through the kidney, right? So that decreased bile secretion, right, can affect your elimination through feces. If they're not clearing it out of feces as quickly, drugs staying in the system longer. Again, nice little table here, kind of breaking down all of the admin considerations. It's nice, it's pretty. I don't want you to memorize it, right? I want you more so to get the concepts of it. So we talked about dosing. So if you're going to dose In pediatrics, you use milligrams per kilogram. Whether you do milligrams per kilogram per day, like Team 11 did, or you do per dose, you definitely need to describe it in mg per kg. So I would dose this at 100 mg per kg per dose, IV Q8. The other way you present that is you say 300 milligrams per kilogram per day, divided every 8 hours. Practitioners are different, but you do want to emphasize how you want to administer this, right? So what's the half-life of Zosyn in kids? So half-life is how you guys determine how long, how frequently you're going to give this, right? Typically speaking. Just for time. For her, she's 9 years old. Her half-life is 0.7 hours. And you dose it based on the piperacillin component. Some places dose it on piperacillin, some dose it on tazobactam. It doesn't matter. It's whatever the institution wants, right? You guys have heard of Bactrim, right? You can dose it based off sulfamethoxazole component. You can base it off trimethoprim component. But make sure you know which one the institution wants, because it's really fun when you dose off the lower one, like in this case tazobactam, and the institution, doses based on the piperacillin component or vice versa. Because then if you dose based on the piperacillin component, they would expect the tazobactam number. That number's going to be huge. And a very good pharmacist would say, hey, wait a second, that dose is wrong. You're not giving you 72,000 milligrams of dose. So if elimination is renal, what do you need to watch and do? What are you going to watch for? Renal function, how are you going to do that? What's that? Serum creatinine? Yeah. You can also look at urine output, again, depending on how old the kid is. 9 years old, I'm not too worried about urine output, although we can measure that. She wouldn't necessarily be too tough yet. So, any questions about that? You guys remember when I taught you pediatric BMT, right? And I talked to you about ceftaroline, that antibiotic that I had absolutely no idea what to do with that drug. This is when pharmacokinetics really factors in, because you have to figure out how to dose this medication, which you know nothing about, and nobody else has described it, and you have to take in all of your knowledge, all of your abilities, right? Looking at all of that ADME profile and the pharmacodynamics of the medication, and making your best educated guess as to how to treat the patient as safely and as effectively as possible, right? So you have to look at the half-life, you have to look at volume distribution, you have to look at protein environment, you have to look at absorption if it's not IV, you have to consider all these different pathways, right? So it may not be the most exciting thing in the world, although I love pharmacokinetics and I think it's fascinating, but that's also why I love being in pediatrics, because I have to use this information, I have to interpret it well in order to take care of my patient effectively. Right? Any questions? Peds is awesome, don't peds. My colleague will argue differently, but that's okay.
Peds get sick too, so you can have all of the concepts of critical care.
Okay. Team 13. We're doing the pregnant patient. Right? So for question 1, we said that there would that the patient would, of course, should gain some weight, and that there would be an increase in total body water, and that there tend to be a decrease in blood pressure, a decrease in blood flow into the kidneys, and decreased cardiac output. And then for number 2, to overcome the effects, we said we would give a higher dose. We would do shorter time intervals between the doses, and then just depending on the type, maybe different administration. And then for the adverse effects that she may have, we said nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, headache. And the resources we use PubMed and then some FDA inserts. And then for the dose, we said, for Zosyn, we said that we would do 3.375 grams IV every 6 hours for 10 days. Team 13, what would you like to add?
think you guys did a nice job. You hit a lot of the key points. Just a couple things. So you said cardiac output and those other sorts of parameters increase. What does that do for total amount of plasma concentration? So serum concentration within the vasculature. Does that go down or does that go up? We actually see an increase in total amount of plasma or components in the vasculature in pregnant patients. If you think about it, your normal cardiac output is calculated through stroke volume and heart rate, but now you've added this extra body mass, you've added literally another human, and that blood has to pass through the placenta, and you have to account for that circulatory system as well. So there's an increased volume, if you will, of intravascular fluid. With that said, there's a proportionate dilution in serum albumin in patients, because you think about your albumin relatively stays the same, but you've got more volume. So the law of dilution tells us that if we have more volume with the same amount of particles, the entirety of that solution becomes more dilute. So something you need to be aware of is the fact that these pregnant patients typically do have less serum albumin, so protein-bound drugs, those that have a high degree or high affinity for serum albumin protein binding, there's going to be some differences. You may wind up with a larger fraction of free drug versus bound drug, especially in highly protein-bound drugs. The other thing I'll share with you is that pregnant patients have differences specifically with their CYP metabolism, their hepatic metabolism. So there are a host of different CYP enzymes, many of which are primary metabolic pathways for drugs. So 3A4, 2C9, 2D6 are some of the major ones that come to mind that fluctuate in pregnancy. Sometimes they're grossly elevated, sometimes they're grossly decreased. So it's really important to gauge not only the trimester of pregnancy with regard to these types of drugs, but also the actual drug itself, because you may wind up with higher concentrations. The big one that comes to mind is that CYP2D6 is decreased specifically in pregnancy, and those patients who are on any type of methadone, morphine, anything like that, if there's some sort of substance abuse in pregnancy, morphine or the morphine derivatives are ultimately converted through 2D6. So you might wind up having much more free-bound available opioid type drug if you don't address this, especially in pregnant patients, and that can be detrimental for both mother and unborn child. So are there any questions about pregnancy in general? Those are two of the major things. Y'all hit most of the others. I applaud you, and there's a couple other groups in here that actually went straight to the package insert for information with their respective patients. That is always a great source to have. So continue to utilize that as a reference. Okay.
Team 15, want to share about our obese patient?
So with our obese patient, we found some physiological changes would be an increase in adipose tissue, with increased lean mass, increased VD, decreased blood flow, increased cardio output. As far as things that have an additive effect, or things that we want to overcome with are drugs that are not largely lipophilic due to the increase of adipose tissue. And if there's increased clearance, we want to use the greater drug dose. Is that wrong? Let's see. Potential causes that cause upward drug meds may be the buildup of lipophilic drugs. It can cause the toxic side effects associated with the drugs, things including seizure, rash, and insomnia. Let's see. Some of the resources we used were the journal Pharmacotherapy, and the appropriate dose that we found on micromedics was, at least for obese patients, was to use 4.5 grams over 4 hours, every 8 hours, as well as when the minimum inhibitory concentration is 16 milligrams per liter or less.
That was a really nice job. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned over 4 hours. Did anybody else here look into what's been coined extended infusion interval dosing of pipericyllin tazobactam? Did anybody else see that at all? Okay, I'm going to talk about that with my brief presentation towards the end of the class here, but it is a fantastic way and a fantastic treatment modality to overcome some of the changes with different patient populations in general. There are actually papers, and I don't want to steal Dr. Cho's thunder, that compare traditional dosing, which is generally the 4.5 grams IV every 6, or some variation of that, 3.375, 2.25 IV every 6 hours. There's actually papers showing that that treatment modality is inferior to using this 3.375 grams IV every 8 hours, but you extend the interval over 4 hours. And again, I'll talk to you about that once I get my presentation towards the end. The real difference I'd like to highlight with that is that there's a specific difference in body composition, and I think you all got this, but between obese patients and pregnant patients. Yes, if they're both the same weight, a pregnant woman has a very much higher composition of total body water compared to adipose tissue. The opposite is true of an obese patient compared to a pregnant patient. So it's important to relate the specific ADME properties and PK/PD properties of each drug as it relates to the body composition of the patient that you're caring for. So I think I talked to most of the groups about this as I was walking around. But for your lipophilic drugs, they're obviously going to expand into tissues much quicker, not necessarily much quicker, to a greater degree in a patient that has a high degree of adipose tissue. And the same would be true for total body water with a hydrophilic drug.
Annette, this is for your third application.
Okay, the physiological changes for the patients are increased body fat proportion, decrease of lean muscle. They also decrease in the phase 1 metabolism. Their age-dependent increase in ADR and toxicity. They also decrease renal elimination and liver function. For number 2, how these ADME effects may be overcome. Decrease in renal elimination may need to be decreased in dosage, decrease phase 1 reaction, choose the drugs that metabolizes by phase 2, increase fats distribution, may need to be adjusted lipophilic medications which distributed into the fats more. Decrease in lean muscle may need to be decreased dosages of medication that distributed into the lean muscle. For number 3, the potential cause of ATE may occur with the increasing of toxicity, will decrease the excretion. For example, bradycardia, hypertension, increased CNS, that's causing sedation effects, and renal for hepatotoxicity. Okay. For number 4, identification for the best resource that can be used to is the Beers criteria and micromedics. And number 5, the dosage for Sosins is 2.25 gram IV every 6 hours for 7 to 10 days.
Elizabeth and Jamie, you want to present for team 17? Anything else to add?
I mean, for the resources, we put lexicon and we use the package insert. There's going to be a decrease in hepatic mass and a decrease in albumin, a decrease in total body water, decrease in GFR, delaying gastric emptying.
So how might that affect acne?
entirely down to the albumin, we have to increase the dose.
So we calculated her estimated GFR and it was 32, so we decided we would like to renally adjust her medication to compensate for decreased elimination. And we also said that since she has a fever, she could be somewhat hypermetabolic, so we can increase the dose or adjust it. But since she is renally, we would focus on that first.
Once again, I commend you for looking at the package insert because it is a reliable source of information. I will ask, first and foremost, what do you expect in terms of total body composition, just to reinforce this point in a geriatric patient? Higher body fat, okay. What else? So that's an increase. What else increases? What else decreases? What else changes? Lean, I heard lean muscle, right? So there's this inverse correlation between lean muscle and adipose tissue as patients age. So generally, they lose muscle mass over time, and they replace that with either adipose tissue or in some cases water. With that said, it's important to note renal function generally declines over time with geriatric patients. And you can relatively understand that by setting up the Cockcroft-Gault equation and looking at the age that goes into that and the weight that goes into that. However, it's important to also note that your serum creatinine or your Cockcroft-Gault equation is historically unreliable in geriatric patients because they have such a relative decrease in lean body mass. What is serum creatinine? Where does that come from?
Muscles.
The breakdown of muscle. So if you don't have muscle or as much muscle as a normal population type genetic person to break down, it can be falsely elevated. So it's important to note that and take it kind of with a grain of salt in your patients. Of course, I'm still saying you need to calculate it and you need to realize that. There are several different tools, and your preceptors, when you go out on your APPE rotations, may talk to you about different ways that they try to compensate for that distinction, but it's an important note to make. Are there any other questions I can answer about geriatric type patients? Anything else you need to know? Ready to burn, let's do it.
Be excited.
Yeah. All right, burn.
Please burn me.
Can everybody hear me? Is this microphone on? Can everybody hear me? Okay. The clicker won't work because it's on a laptop, so I'm just unfortunately going to stand here instead of circulating. But let's talk about burn patients. So everything that you just learned about all these fun pharmacokinetics and dynamics and all the great work you just did just became entirely irrelevant when talking about this patient population. So I want to explain to you in critical illness, but as well specifically trauma and burn patients, the differences in those types of patient populations when it comes to dosing medications. So let's talk about this in terms of burn patients. I will tell you, I did my critical care training in a burn center, so it is really, really difficult to walk into a room with a burn patient, but it's important that you evaluate them with your own eyes because it makes a huge difference when you're dosing drugs, and we'll talk about the applicability of that when we get a little bit further here. But first and foremost, I'll share with you a story. The first burn that I ever had to manage in terms of their pharmaceutical needs was a patient who, can I hear me? Am I talking too loud? I'm too loud. Okay. This was a gentleman who had to get up early for work every morning, so he left his house about 3 o'clock, and I did my training in Toledo, Ohio, so it's very, very north. It's cold. This was in November. His old beat-up truck didn't have any heat inside of his truck, so the way that he combated this was taking a kerosene lantern and putting it on the floor of his truck and lighting it on the way to work every morning. So I see heads shaking. Everybody knows where this story may be going. So this unfortunate individual hit a pothole. The kerosene lantern flipped, cracked, fire starts, and by the time he got to us, he actually crashed his car too. So he had a traumatic brain injury. So this is a great integrated topic based on what I talked to you all about Tuesday. But He had third-degree burns from his feet all the way up to about his mid-thighs, and then his right hand was burned up to about the elbow from trying to pat out the flames as he was driving. So if you imagine a burn with an accelerant, it stays on there, and it's not great. I will tell you though that there are different types of burns. So we just talked about like a thermodynamic type of burn. There are chemical burns, as well as electrical burns, and all of those have different. You need to be aware of those because they affect tissue and body structures differently, and that ultimately will alter the pharmacokinetics of the drugs that you're using. So without further ado, let's get into this. So this is just a basic overview. I'm sure we've all heard first, second, third degree, fourth degree, etc. This is just an overview of what that actually means in terms of distinct medical terminology. So a first degree burn is basically a sunburn. I'm sure we've all had that or experienced it or know somebody that's experienced it. Superficial, touches the outside of the epidermis. If you move your way all the way down to second, third, and fourth degree burns, that's really where we start to be concerned about changes to the body, and particularly these burns that penetrate into the dermis layer and even further down into the adipose tissue, actual muscle, or all the way down to the down to the bone. So for the purposes of pharmacokinetic changes, we're really mostly concerned about second deep partial thickness, third full thickness, and fourth terminal burns. Terminal meaning that it has absolutely reached muscle and or bone, so the terminus of the way that it can travel that pathway. This is why it becomes incredibly important for you to physically evaluate your patients. Pharmacists can't be good pharmacists if they're stuck behind a computer in a basement somewhere. So I implore you, no matter where you're at, go look at your patient if you have the ability to do so. This is something called the rule of nines. Has anybody heard of this before? Okay. So this is the way that we stage burns rather quickly in the trauma base. These patients come in, they're obviously writhing in pain. It's a very, very difficult situation when somebody's screaming and you're trying to say, now hold still, I gotta see how many rule of nines you have. So what we do is we estimate, and we use the palmar surface of our hands, and we estimate and say that this is about 1% of your total body surface area. So the chart here has 1.5%. That's the technical way that it's done, but if you average my hand versus somebody who's just a little bit smaller, we just say for easy math, 1% is your palmar surface of your hand. So you have to try to figure out, okay, how burned is this patient and why does it become relevant? I will say that the next slide does have a picture of a burn patient, so if you may feel a little bit squeamish, you don't want to look, that's perfectly fine. It's not incredibly bad, it's just a pretty bad sunburn with the patient is intubated, so with that said, you've been warned. But this is a burn patient. And this is a gentleman who has suffered an approximately 20% total body surface area burn. And that is a threshold that's important to know because at 20%, your body starts exhibiting severe physiologic changes, and it truly alters the pharmacokinetics, dynamics, everything that normally happens in the body. So if we're grading this person based on a palmar surface of approximately 1%, let's look at how we got to approximately 20. So the anterior head and neck is approximately 4.5%. The bilateral anterior arms, which are both covered here, which you can see some of the red skin through the actual body, is approximately 9%. And then the trunk space is approximately 7%. So the lower anterior trunk is approximately 7%. So adding all this up, you get, I think, about 20.5%, 21%. And I will say that this is not an exact science. Somebody would walk in the room and say that this is 30%, this is 20%. Doesn't really matter. The threshold that you need to know, especially at the immediate time of the burn when they present to you, is does this appear to be or is this definitively greater than 20%? Because that's when things start to go haywire. There are two basic thresholds for pharmacokinetic changes in burns, and these occur both immediately post-acute burn and then after that. So we call this the ebb phase and the flow phase. The ebb phase occurs within the first 48 hours post-burn, and as you can imagine, your body is starting to realize what has happened, go into a state of shock, and it's trying to compensate for what's happened. So Langerhans cells and keratinocytes release these inflammatory and immunomodulatory cytokines. So there's a large degree of inflammation, and as you would remember from your previous classes, what does inflammation do to endothelial structures? What does it do to tissue structures? More permeable, right. Your body tries to compensate like this increased permeability by releasing norepinephrine and serotonin to try to vasoconstrict and hold on to as much fluid as it can. However, your body can't compensate, especially once you've reached this 20% threshold. So you can think about your vasculature turning into something like a sieve or a colander that you would use to filter your pasta at night when you're making your noodles. Everything that is in the intravascular space expands and it leaves and it permeates out. That includes your serum proteins, so albumin. That includes massive amounts of sodium, massive amounts of electrolytes, massive amounts of anything that is found within the cell plasma. It's all extravasated. So what happens, if you think about what maintains blood pressure, there's no volume in the intravascular space. So the first thing that we do with these patients is we give them tons and tons and tons of fluid. There's a specific equation, you don't need to know this, it's called the Parkland equation, and basically it's 4 milliliters per kilogram per total percent body surface area burn. So it generally winds up being somewhere between 4 and 6 liters in the first 24 hours that these patients wind up dead, which is an astronomical amount of fluid. If you think of the fact that us in here have somewhere between 4 and 5 liters in our bodies right now at normal physiologic concentrations. So it's a big deal. So in this case, if you're giving drugs immediately when somebody comes in, the biggest concern is antibiotics and analgesics. Because these patients, you've got to think, there's now a direct line for all these bacteria in the environment and your normal skin flora that may not have been killed by the burn. It's now touching muscle, tissue, bone, anything and everything that has been exposed. So think about that in terms of Zosyn that we just talked about. What would happen if you gave that drug intravenously, and where's it going to go? Who knows, right? You can't adequately predict where the drug's going to go. You can't adequately predict serum concentrations. You can't adequately predict any type of half-life or anything that you can do, a calculator or not, is not going to be necessarily reliable. We'll talk about some strategies to try to overcome this as best as we can. The next thing that happens is in the flow phase, at 48 hours post-burn, your body starts to rebuild. So it's estimated that the basal metabolic rate of these patients goes to about 200% of you and I sitting here because it's constantly trying to rebuild the skin, the tegumentary system, the musculature that's been damaged. And eventually, at this point, we start giving patients anabolic steroids to help them rebuild their muscle mass. So you've got to think, so now we're hypermetabolic. So everything is going to be metabolized in the body twice as fast as what it normally would. So what happens with those patients when we talk about drugs? Let's talk about Zosyn. So population kinetics, I copied these directly in the middle column, specifically from Lexicon. And then I've sourced a paper that's a really good summary review that I can try to provide to you if you're interested on burn kinetics. So you can see that the volume of distribution increases nearly 10 times. You can see that the half-life decreases by about 50%. The clearance increases. And protein binding is minimal because, as we talked about, there's relatively no protein. So the things you need to be aware of with this is that you would see an increase in volume distribution, a decreased clearance, and basically negligible protein binding. These slides will be posted for you, so you don't need to take notes or highlight or copy anything. I just want to kind of talk to you through this. So what do we need to do? And the answer to that is it depends, which is the pharmacist's both favorite and least favorite phrase to ever hear. The ebb phase, you have that acute hypoalbuminemia with the increased volume distribution and these fluid shifts. You may need higher doses. The flow phase, you may not need as higher dose, but you are now metabolizing it twice as fast. So as you can imagine, this becomes a really sticky situation and kind of a mess in order to quantify what do I actually need to do with this patient. And this is where it's so important to take all of the tenets and the pillars of things that you've learned in this class and all of your pharmacotherapy classes, because you are not going to be able to go to Lexicomp and say, how many milligrams per kilogram of hypericillin tazobactam can I give to a patient with a 35% total body surface area burn 7 days post-burn? It doesn't exist. So you have to be able to rationalize your way through this. Essentially, empiric therapy is generally started within that first 48 hours to ensure that the patient is protected against any type of skin or skin structure infection. After that, increased doses are generally going to be likely. And the other thing is this extended interval is likely going to be required. So this extended interval infusion is something that we use to try to mitigate some of these PK and PD changes with particular effect to the beta-lactam antibiotics. So this is a graphical representation of what happens, and one of the groups, I forget which, talked about the dosing over 4 hours, every 8 hours repeating. That is described by the blue line on this particular graph. So the dashed horizontal line depicts the minimal inhibitory concentration, and I know that you all haven't had ID yet, but hopefully this is ringing some bells from microbiology way back. That is the concentration at which you need to be above. That's the minimum line in order to be efficacious in killing the bacteria, in layman terms. So you can see by giving somebody with the red line, which depicts the 3.375 or 4.45 grams every 6 hours, you have these really, really high peaks, but then you have these pretty sustained valleys that go until you repeat the next dose. That's mitigated by giving the drug over 4 hours every 8 hours. You actually maximize the time that that drug is able to be above the minimum inhibitory concentration. So this is one strategy that we use quite frequently in all patients, but especially critically ill patients when you can't necessarily quantify the degree of these changes. It's really important to have this as part of your arsenal and use this as a potential therapy option in treating patients where you simply cannot predict what's actually happening within their compartments. With that said, that's what I have for you on burns today. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. I just wanted to present to you the other side of this. So, with that said, references there. These will be posted for you at some point in the future. So, thanks for your attention and listening.
So we hope you had fun today to see how PK and clinical folks in that interface. How you gotta pull it all together. Maybe you could return your folders, podium somewhere, calculator.